Welcome to AI for that. We're here today with Jasper Wognum, co-founder of so many different companies, creations. I want to hear all about them. Jasper, thanks for coming to the show.
Nice to see you again. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Jasper, it's tough to count how many different companies, organizations you founded. What would you put the number at?
Good question. Serious attempts, maybe six.
Six
Yeah.
Six serious attempts.
Yeah.
Wow. And it sounds like several of them are folded within Brain Creators, one of your main focus areas, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I worked at a number of startups as well that I didn't found myself, but I learned a lot from them, ranging from anything in the financial services to social networking, e-commerce. But I did study AI, and I got my master's degree in 2004. So I waited quite some time distracting myself with all kinds of other stuff before getting back into AI in 2012. Initially with a startup called LookLife that did fashion recognition. So we would pause a Netflix show and then say, in this scene, you see all these items and you can buy them there and there. And if a plain white t-shirt saying Supreme on the front is a bit too much for you, you can also buy a plain white t-shirt at Target and it's just $10. And that was the concept. It was a lot of fun, but we wanted to do more in the AI space. So in 2016, almost 9 years ago, we started Brain Creators to do exactly that, only to go back into specific products, which we're doing today, because we have a very sharp focus on a particular type of user in a very, well, I would say, niche domain, which is still very large. So we focus on surveillance on water for ports, but also inland waterways or open sea. That sounds like very niche because it's only useful to surveillance camera operators, but there are so many of those and they have to watch so many camera feeds that it's almost impossible to do. So we help them, and that applies to like the whole maritime world. So there's still a very big market. And the same goes for our other product, Inspec, which is about road inspection and maintenance planning. That's very niche because, there are only a limited set of civil engineers and road inspectors who actually use that. But still, the world is paved with roads, so it's still a very large market. So that's how we sort of stay under the radar as a big AI company competing with all the others, but still have very large markets to target.
Yeah, you work in the realm of what I call very unsexy focus areas, and perhaps because they're
unsexy.
intentionally unsexy.
Yeah.
Unlike lookalike, which sounds like it was intentionally sexy.
Yeah, that's because it was for AI or machine learning, deep learning as we know it today. That was pretty early. So if you would go in with the idea of selling that would be a very hard sell. This was something that anyone can imagine, right? Anyone looking at TV shows or Netflix shows or whatever platform you watch is interested in looking like the characters they admire. So you're naturally drawn to buying their stuff.
Yeah, and now with Seagull surveillance and Inspec, you're really reaching into these untapped, intentionally unsexy markets, but that have a whole lot of potential to benefit from the technology and to benefit the much larger systems that infrastructure is a part of.
Yeah, and still, I mean, going to customs to see what's happening on the water is still pretty sexy. It reads like an adventure, right? It's like stuff is happening there. It's just not very common and public.
Yeah, and a hot button issue right now with all the conversations made.
Yeah, there's a lot of smuggling going on. There's a lot of threats to whole continents, and that only raises budgets for these kinds of solutions. So we didn't take this into account when we started, but it's a nice. It's one of the few benefits of global tension.
Well put. So you've been in AI much longer than most people have even been aware that it exists. Much longer. You said you did your master's in AI, but you had another master's as well, or another focus in it.
Yeah. So when I started, which was 1995, I think it was the second year that AI was available as a 5-year course with a bachelor and a master's at the University of Amsterdam. And back then, sorry people if you're still involved, it was a bit of a sort of different courses scraped together to form a sort of study. So it was a bit of psychology, it was a bit of philosophy, it was a bit of math, a bit of computer programming, computer science, a bit of language stuff. Yeah, so we moved all over the place. There wasn't like a faculty for us. So Amsterdam University was back then was scattered throughout the city. So you would hop on a bike and go from one to the other to sort of mingle with the psychology crew and then mingle with the math crew. And so it was a bit weird. And actually, it was quite intimidating at first because I'm not into programming or into mathematical formulas and algorithms. I'm more interested in humans. So when I started, I just picked this because it was the most exciting thing to pick at the University of Amsterdam. Like it was economics or law or that kind of stuff. And then it said artificial intelligence. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to have fun, I'd better choose something exciting. So that's what I did. And then the struggle came in the first year when it was so much more like linear algebra and proper calculus stuff that I didn't think was going to appear, and I found it very hard. So I sort of struggled my way through it. And then when I could choose for a master's, I chose computational psychology because that was more about how humans operate and how you mimic that, which was more interesting to me. So I finished that, and nobody was looking for anything remotely like it because it was 2004. We all remembered the dot-com crash, and yeah, we were just building websites. We weren't concerned with any automation in the form of early AI. Most of AI was about yeah, knowledge representation. So you used to have these things called ontologies, which were attempts to describe a world by defining everything and then having relationships, a bit like a graph database. So I remember a particular project we had for a desert somewhere in there, where in Brazil, and we would literally define every grain of sand and how it related to trees and water and sky and you name it. And then the idea behind that was that you could create rules to reason about a particular domain by going through these ontologies and connecting everything. So yeah, a drop of rain is a sort of water. It comes from a cloud, and a cloud is a vaporized version of the sea, that kind of stuff. So we did get a, not even a course, I think it was a sort of a topic in the philosophical side about deep learning. What we do nowadays with neural networks, it wasn't called deep learning at the time, and it was just like we can create a mathematical version of a neuron based on what we knew about the human brain and mostly about human memory. So there are connections between neurons, and the more often they fire, the more strength the connection has. So the stronger the memory is. That theory in math is what makes a neural network in the end. But it took till 2012 for that to become even possible on hardware, but also more mainstream and of any use. And of course, that's the basis of everything almost we do with AI today. And where it becomes exciting again is that we see how this starts to combine with the stuff we did in the 90s, which is create these ontologies and have these rule-based systems. So somewhere in the combination of more traditional and more modern AI is the more exciting part. And that's what you see with the large language models now. It's a combination of rules and deep learning. So
So
that was one master, by the way. Sorry, forgot to answer your question. My other master was because I was struggling in consultancy with big companies and I didn't understand why they were so complex and so slow. So I did a second master's in enterprise architecture just to understand why large corporations make everything so complex. Only to find out that in the end, the solution to that is to take humans and find what they're good at and make them work together instead of having rules for everything. So yeah, that was my second master.
So that's like a fundamental shift in organizational psychology, going from a rules based try and sort of control everything paradigm to an understanding focus on the relationships paradigm. Am I understanding that shift that you?
Yeah, I think what triggered me in that master about enterprise architecture was mostly the concept of self-steering teams, where you give people a desirable outcome and you ask them to work together in a way that they come closer to that outcome every day, which is a bit like the opposite of the traditional top-down management style.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's some distinctions I like in the self-driven teams literature. One, three categories that I've come across that I really like. One is self-directing teams where they pick their own outcome. Self-managing teams where, as you said, they're sort of given the outcome and then steer how to get there on their own. And then self-organizing teams, which is maybe they have the outcome, but they choose who to work with, how to constitute the team itself. All three of which are varying degrees away from the someone else is in charge telling you where to go, what to do, who to do it with.
Yeah, which is a very um, I would say sticky uh, paradigm from the past. So even though we've had all this agile stuff and the self-steering teams, or I still encounter lots of situations where people sort of revert to that classical top-down, like just
Yeah,
do as I say, kind of management, either from panic or because they think they're always right.
yeah.
Um,
And
it's
as
difficult to escape.
it's very, I like how you put it. It is a very sticky paradigm.
Mm.
And I'm curious, as a leader, quite experienced leader, uh, how do you how do you lead that within your own companies? Are they completely self-steering? To what degree are you defining outcomes, defining paths to get there? What's it look like inside
Yeah,
leaders?
that's an interesting question because I think all through my career I've been sort of experimenting, like with the thought you never know what to do next until you try something different, right? It's like if you keep repeating the same thing and it doesn't completely work, then you'll be having the same results always. So I always have a tendency to change stuff if I see something that isn't working, which also has a downside because people feel like you're chaotic because you're always changing stuff.
Yeah,
But and that's true, right? It appears to be chaos, but if you have the philosophy of if it ain't working, then change it and discover whether that works, right? I think
yeah,
the other approach is very arrogant to just say, I know how this works, so just do it, right? And stick to
yeah,
the plan. I don't believe in plans. I don't believe in management. I believe in having like minded people trying to reach something. And then you didn't hire people for nothing, right? You hired people because you saw a light that's on, you see a capacity to learn, you see a talent, and then whatever you throw at them, as long as it doesn't bore them, is going to be something they would like to achieve. So they're going to use their talent to achieve that. And the more you limit that by restricting them, the less results you can expect. So yeah, I've tried a lot. Um, and still we're changing almost monthly something or
I
something.
want to hear some examples of those changes recently, and what you're
Yeah.
saying also. It's giving me more color on this beautiful phrase you had the first time we spoke of, that connected why you were studying psychology alongside AI. That you weren't so interested in how to code computers so much as how to decode humans.
Exactly.
And it sounds like
Computers are predictable and quite boring. Humans are an endless source of entertainment and never really predictable because there's so much unpredictable stuff going on, right? So we have this unique property for now, which we call like intuition, but also emotion. And as soon as we become emotional about something, our behavior completely changed. We are less rational. We're more inclined to just yeah pick something with a lot of passion, which is not necessarily right. We didn't think it through, and a version of that is intuition, where you don't know exactly why you make a decision, but you just feel that it's the right thing to do next, or at least it's the thing you'd like to do. So I'm always looking, observing how people are responding and are acting, and not thinking that I know how to do it, but convinced that if I give people the space to try something, that they will have more results than if I don't, right? And that doesn't work. People leave, people don't agree, people cannot escape the paradigm of tell me what to do, or they panic at some certain point of uncertainty where they think, and I've literally heard this over the years, like, can't you just tell me what to do? Because that would be more comfortable for me. I mean, yeah, okay, but you can ask that once or twice, and I can tell you what to do every now and then. But if this is your permanent state of being, then this is not the place for you, because that's not how I think.
yeah, yeah,
So
really.
hmm?
Go ahead.
A recent example. I've been following this guy for the past, I think, 20 years maybe. It's Marty Kagan
Yeah,
of the Silicon Valley Product Group. Um, we've been trying. We organize a yearly event called Product Camp Amsterdam, and we've been trying to get Marty for like the last 12 or 13 years as a speaker. And he always politely declined, like, yeah, I'd love to, but I can't make it. And last November, he said, yeah, I'd love to. And he actually came. So we had a sold out event, and Marty turned out to be a really awesome guy. Stayed around, delayed his lunch for an hour just to answer questions from the public. And um, he came back in the afternoon just to have dinner with us as the organization in the restaurant here around the corner. And he was very relaxed and very charming guy, um, which I didn't expect. I sort of knew he would be nice because I liked the stuff he's saying, but that he would, in his busy schedule of speaking everywhere, take the time to just have dinner with the organization yeah, that was really impressive. And that sparked a new interest in his theory. So I've done a couple of presentations after that internally about his theories. I've put the books everywhere. People have read.
and just connect the dots for those listening of what you've encountered in Marty Kagan's work and self steering teams, people who can get
Yeah,
there more on their own instead of just saying, "Tell me what to do."
yeah. Marty is actually it's a part of his theory, so it's actually a very down to earth, practical way of designing software products mostly, but also working as teams. So he started with a book called Inspired a long time ago about how to make products that people actually want to use, how to go about this. And by now, that's like common, right? You look at users, you interview them, you see how they respond, what creates value, and you put that first. And that combines with the whole more agile approach. And lately, he's been adding books about organizational structure and how to deal with different departments, how to deal with stakeholders, how to make this work in practice. And I think there's always something to learn from that. And the focus for us, we already had basically his theory in our product development teams, but the way sales and marketing and management and development and everyone was working together can always be improved. So that's how we used Marty's latest book, which is more for like corporate firms, but still there's a lot to take from it. And we use that internally to just realign, make everyone feel like they're all fighting for the same cause and not
Mhm.
okay, just throw the product over the fence and we'll do marketing. And then when marketing is
Yeah.
done, throw it over the fence and we'll do sales. No, you're all there involved from the very start till the end. And you should know why you're building a feature. So not
Yes.
because your product manager is telling you to, but who is actually using this and what are they getting from it? And
Yeah.
that informs you on how to build it. And that also enables you to make your own decisions because every now and then you fall into this pattern of, okay, product manager, just make a ticket and tell me what to build. But if you're not informed about why you're building this in the first place, then yeah, it's pretty random what the result is going to be.
Yeah. I think it was his second book, the one called Empowered.
Yeah,
And yeah,
Careers
really.
Transformed, and this, I think that's the latest. And there's a marketing book in between that Marty didn't write himself, with someone else from the Silicon Valley product group, which is
Um,
also useful.
yeah.
Love, it's called.
Love.
Mm, loved.
Loved.
Yeah,
Inspired, empowered, loved. I got the
yeah,
theme here.
yeah,
There's a concept I play with a lot. Um, Using adult development psychology, I refer to actors and authors. Actors are the people who are saying, like, just tell me what to do. Give me the script, and I'll go do it. Tell me what my role is, and really what you're saying you want to work, who you want to work with, is people who see themselves as authors or co-authors. I'm part
yeah,
of shaping the next step, the story, the product, the team itself. Uh, yes, of course, here and there we're going to tell each other what to do, but in a rapidly changing world, we need people who can learn, who can figure out what the next step is, what direction makes the most sense. And when we have a team filled with co-authors, it's just a totally different energy than people waiting to be told what to do.
yeah, yeah. And it ties in with a lot of other stuff I've encountered over the years. And um, Marty is not the only sort of guru with theories. There are many more, but I think his work is a nice sort of summary of all that into something practical that you can actually execute on. And the nice thing about doing this is that you're still working with people, and they're never really predictable. So, and of
Yeah,
course, I compare my working life and my coworkers with just any relationship, right? So the tightest relationship you have is a sort of love relationship where it's a commitment to each other. And then there's friendship, which is also sort of open commitment for unforeseeable future, but without any, um, yeah, how do you say that? Without any formal rules, right? You're just
yeah,
friends. If you're not, then you lose sight, and it's also fine. You just trust each other to go your own way. With work, it's a conditional relationship, right? There's always a contract where it says, okay, you're supposed to provide value to this organization, and this is what you get to compensate for it. So it's always, but it's still a relationship. So it starts with somehow being in love. You start a new job, a new place, you love everything, and everything's nice from lunch to coffee to your colleagues to the projects.
yeah,
And there's a sort of phase where that in love, sort of unrealistic, great feeling is gone, and then it becomes normalized. And then after a while, you start to see what's wrong,
yeah,
what's giving friction. And if that becomes too much, you end the relationship and you go find a new one.
yeah,
And if you don't reach that, you commit for a longer term, and that's all fine. But this is the way I look at the people you work with in a business. It's all people who signed up for a conditional relationship for as long as it lasts, and you can expect them to be in love for a while and to love the company for a while. And at a certain point, they're also going to go. I mean,
yeah,
there are a few people who've been around since 2016, but I never expect them to. And most of them hang around for like 3, 4 years and then go do something else. And that's fine. I mean, we hire people who did something else before and gained valuable experience. So why not?
yeah,
But in that period where you get to hang out, um, I think you make most use of each other's time if you respect someone's talent and you just, as Marty would say, empower them to do the best they can instead of try to push them in a sort of box.
Yeah. What's a challenge that you found recently or not so recently around doing that, but one that you made it through? Maybe somebody pushed you, maybe someone said, just tell me what to do, but you made it through that friction to a more empowered relationship.
Hmm. On a one-to-one basis, that sort of happens continuously, but that depends very much on a person's character. So there are people who you can show the light, so to say, like, okay, as a reminder, we're going there and we're doing fine. We're getting there as long as we keep moving, making the next step. Chances are we're getting there. And then they go back and think, okay, great. And then after a while, they lose that feeling and they come back to get some more, and then they're off again, right? So
Yeah.
that's one way, but there are also people who just sort of withdraw and become frustrated, and it's fine if you don't just tell me at a certain point I'm leaving because I don't see that light anymore or that light at the end of the tunnel. Then okay, fine, I respect
Yeah.
that. If you go, you go. What also happens is people who just withdraw and hold sort of grudge against you or the company and start sort of sabotaging the whole thing by either
Yeah.
calling sick and staying there and then making demands, or I mean, these are highly educated, talented people. If you don't like it here, you can find something else which is probably better paying and more fun elsewhere, and just
Yeah.
do it. And I'll respect you for it, right? So
Yeah. There are two things that I'm really appreciating what you're saying. Number one is this very um, clear sense that you have, this very clear criteria of like, is the light on in them or not?
yeah,
When you're hiring, you're looking for it. Sometimes they come back to sort of plug back into to the source, to the sense of purpose, and they leave with the light turned back on again. Um, Sometimes the light turns off, and you and they realize that actually somewhere else is going to be the better place for them to plug in. And that's the
yeah.
second thing of it sounds like you're relatively unfazed. If they want to go somewhere else, great. You're not in a sort of I have to keep these people here or it's some kind of big failure on my part if they want.
No,
It just is.
that's, I think that is where you become vulnerable as a founder or a leader, or if this affects you personally because you feel like this is not the conditional, but you confuse it with sort of a friendship or a even worse, a lover's relation, right? If a lover leaves you, that hurts. If a friend leaves you, depending on how it happens, it hurts less, but it can also be painful. But in a conditional relationship, like in the working place, then yeah, this is a given, right? Nobody commits, maybe in the past, nobody commits to a single company for like 40 years
Right.
to get the gold watch anymore. It's just, I make use of whatever you learned before this until you stop learning, and then you decide to go learn somewhere else, and that's perfectly fine. And it's wasted energy to feel very bad about that. Of course, when someone tells you I'm going and you didn't expect it, it's like, ah, that's a shame. But it's not a personal, it's not a hurtful thing, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I respect it. It becomes frustrating if you hang around and you go and frustrate the whole thing.
Yeah. Like one
That
way or another, you got to make it through in any relationship. There's this model that I really like of relational development that, there's this honeymoon phase, as you said, we're totally in love with each other. And sooner or later, after a year or two, uh, the partners, the members of the relationship, they want some more space. They're no longer totally identified with the company or the role, whatever. And they differentiate. They're more interested in the world outside of this relationship, more interested in exploring their own interests. And then they'll either exit the relationship, or they'll stay in it and come back into it in a way that retains the independence, that's not totally wrapped up in the other party, but sees that, oh, I can be me here,
Yeah.
and there's still something for me here. But if they're stuck in this, I'm not coming back together, and I'm also not leaving, then it can create some toxicity in the system.
Yeah. Yeah. With any relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I want to switch gears for a minute. So you've founded seriously 6 different enterprises, 6 different startups, and I don't know if it's one of these 6 or a seventh. You've also played a big role in growing AI Salon to now, you told me, 350 participants across dozens of cities around the globe. What's AI Salon? What happens there?
Yeah. So we have 350 participants or registrations per event here in Amsterdam, and there are 40 plus cities by now across the globe that also host their own version of AI Salon. Some of them ask for help. How do I organize this? How do I promote it? Some just start or ask others for help. That's all fine. It is a bit of a startup, but I don't consider this the 7th startup. It's a community thing. It's
Yeah.
it's a bit of giving back, and there's also something in it for me. It allows me to meet lots of new people in a familiar space, and strengthen my own network. So that's basically why I do it, and also because it's just a lot of fun. I like to group people around a certain topic. That's basically what I do when I start a company. It's also what I do with AI Salon. It's also what I do in private with friends.
Yeah.
I
So
just
you just
gather
have
them
this
around
strong,
something.
yeah, this strong organizing energy of, there's something I'm interested in. Other people are going to be interested in it too. I'm going to bring them together in some degree of informal or formal gathering, and we're going to explore and learn about this thing together. Sometimes it's
Yeah,
a company, sometimes it's a salon, sometimes it's dinner.
a trip, a festival, can be anything. Yeah. Yeah, and I've done this as I have this memory of when I was a kid. I used to build like a shed in a garden, like with all kinds of stuff I could find, and then gather all the kids from the neighborhood and just say, let's cook something. And then we started to bake pancakes or whatever. But I was mostly curious in what happens if you take a group of people you like and you bring them together and you just see what happens. Um, and that's basically what I still do. So sometimes it's more informed. So
Yeah.
in my company, I know what we're trying to do. We discover together. Um, if we're going somewhere on a trip, there's obviously a reason and a goal. And sometimes, it's completely random and it's just for fun.
Yeah.
But the idea is always the same. I don't have to be the one who dances on the table in the middle or sings the song. I just want to bring them together, and it's fine if someone else takes the spotlight. But that's basically AI Salon. So I think maybe already 2 years ago, Jeffrey Abbott from Blitzscaling Ventures, he was speaking at an event, and the location of that event was our office. We have this beautiful space upstairs, which is basically a nightclub with everything in it: the sound system, the lights, the bar, the kitchen. And we can use it for free as a renter of this place. So, yeah, we just started hosting events there. And at one of these events, Jeff was a speaker, and we got to know each other. He appeared on our podcast. We had some calls. We met up almost as a coincidence in the middle of Las Vegas last summer because we were both there somehow. So yeah, at a certain point, Jeff said, "I have this idea to revive or get together as a community around the topic of AI." And I thought, obviously, the goal here is to get deal flow going for Blitzscaling Ventures. But it turned out to be Jeff's private idea. Um, and he said, "Would you be willing to be one of the starters of this community? So you have such a beautiful office with such a, yeah, great facility. let's just get going. And I was like, okay, this sounds familiar because we'd done this before in 2017 with City AI, which was a similar initiative. We just had speakers and drinks once a month at different locations. So I was up for it, and I just started, promoted it on my own LinkedIn, and I think 40, 50 people showed up. And Jeff was one of the speakers, and it was just a fun event. But immediately I started to notice that people really loved it for some reason. I thought, well, it's a bit messy. It's just getting people together and having drinks in an office. Um, but it turned out that this was sort of a unique, low key event where people weren't dressed up, but it wasn't all. It also wasn't like a startup event with like very crappy, um, I mean, very trendy surrounding. Um, so yeah, we just took it from there, and I connected with people from TechLeap, which is a governmental organization here in the Netherlands for startup founders and scale-up founders. Then with Women in AI, then with Amsterdam AI, which is another organization. So we collected like relationships with other partners and started promoting, and that led to from like 40 people at the first event to closing the waiting list at the last event we did because it was just too full.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And Jeff took it from there and used this as a sort of blueprint for other cities. I think in the end, where Jeff's from, in Phoenix, there was the first event. They were just before Amsterdam, I think, in the end. So we weren't actually the first. But yeah, it grew from there. And now I think in October, we're having a global AI Salon organizers event in Lisbon, um,
My
where
neighbor.
we meet all these founders for AI Salon initiatives across the globe. So that's really exciting.
So people can find this at aisalon.ai if they want to look up or start a local chapter.
Yeah, anyone can basically start one. It's a really simple format. The one we use is two speakers, 15 minutes each, and then uh, demo pitches for startups. So if you want to demo something, you announce your demo in 1 minute and you tell the crowd where to go. And then it's just networking for hours. And
Wow.
yeah, we usually close at like 10, but it's also been much later sometimes.
And what's your sense? My growing sense is that there's a lot happening with AI in Amsterdam, a disproportionate amount. Does that match your sense? And if so, what's your sense of what's driving that?
I don't know if that's the case. I have a skewed perspective because I'm in Amsterdam and I'm from Amsterdam. So, yeah, stuff is happening. Um, is it more than elsewhere? I don't know. Even in the Netherlands, I know similar hubs in Eindhoven and Rotterdam and Groningen, also in the east of the country. So there's just a lot going on. It's quite fragmented in the sense that everyone is on their own sort of community. So that's something we're trying to break a little bit with AI Salon.
Mm-hmm.
Because the next big step for AI Salon is to connect all these local communities on a global platform.
Mm.
So we get more of a unified community than these separate initiatives everywhere. But I don't know. I don't. If you ask people involved in the, if there's such a thing, AI scene here, they would say that it's better elsewhere, probably, if they're being honest. But that's always the case, right? We look at, of course, at US, OpenAI, that kind of stuff that's like out of reach for the Dutch funding scene. And
Right.
now Europe is becoming a thing, thanks to Trump, of course, where we sort of see at least funds become available on a European level. There was always a grant program and a subsidy program from the European Commission, but that's like really picking up now. But that doesn't mean that we interact with the French or
Right.
whoever at a daily basis. But something is happening. But I don't personally see this like Amsterdam is an AI sort of capital now.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
Of course, we invented, or we, Python was invented in Amsterdam. That's often overlooked. I mean, the
I
whole
didn't know.
world is using Python to code AI sort of
Yeah,
applications. That's quite an achievement, but we're too modest about that achievement, I think.
I hear
So
the
no, the
modesty.
big LLM didn't come from Amsterdam or even Europe, but the code they write is all written in a language that came from Amsterdam. So that's something.
All right. If it's not Dutch, it is Python.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And what's your sense for yourself? Having started so many startups and gatherings, what lies ahead for you in the next year?
That's always a very difficult question. I don't approach life with
Not as a
an
plan, not as a
idea.
not as a plan,
No.
but a dream or a hypothesis.
Um, well, what I'm really excited about is not necessarily just the path we're on and making it bigger, 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 like bigger language model, bigger image generation model, or whatever. What I'm quite excited and also scared by is the use or the growth of human brain tissue on top of computer chips and robots. Because even though we've come quite far with AI and what we can do and how we can apply it, we still don't know everything about the human brain, and especially about these special properties we connect to being human, like our emotion and our consciousness and if you ask sort of the generation that laid down the basics for neural networks, like Geoff Hinton, they still say that it's appearing and in some ways it's already conscious and stuff, but it's not the same. And how would we know if we don't know yet how this works in our own brain? So a way to bypass that is just to grow human brain tissue on a computer chip, which is not very new. I went to this museum here in a Dutch city in Leiden. There's a museum with the very early attempts that are like from long ago, where they already tried to grow human brain tissue on computer chips in a more primitive way. And it's still quite primitive. But if this accelerates, then we're looking at proper cyborg territory. And that's where it becomes quite scary, potentially, because, yeah,
Well, for someone whose
what's going to
company
happen?
is named Brain Creators, I can
Yeah.
see why that would overlap with your interest.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, then it really, then there is no end in sight, right? Because then you can just have machines more powerful than human bodies
Yeah,
with the brain power of human, which is still much more efficient than a big neural network.
yeah. Well, that is indeed as intriguing as it is scary to me.
Yeah. I
Uh,
think we'll see some of that in the next decades. Yeah.
at the pace of progress, maybe 3 years ago I would have said that's absurd, and now who knows? I wouldn't rule it out.
No, I've actually like I don't know, 8 years ago, 7 years ago, I've already seen a demo of this, which was very primitive. So it was basically a cart for wheels and some tissue on it. And they were training it not to bump into walls in like a square sort of thing where it would just drive into the wall all the time. And it took ages for it to learn to stop just before it hit the wall.
Wow.
But that was already like 7 or 8 years ago. So yeah, it's not very new, but once it takes off, it's going to open up a whole new world.
Yeah, a whole new species in that world.
Yeah,
All right, Jasper Wognum, thanks so much for joining us on AI for that.
you're
And
welcome.
I look forward to sharing that story and your insights on humans within organizations with our listeners.
Cool.